Welcome to today's show on Global Citizen Life podcast. We have Miriam Wexler, who is originally from Canada, and she is currently living in the beautiful city of Florence, Italy. Well, welcome, Miriam.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Good to be here.
Great. And so Florence is one of my favorite cities. Italy is one of my favorite countries. I absolutely love it. How did you decide to pick Florence and move there? And how long have you been living there?
So, this has been about 18 years in the making. I always knew that I was going to move to Italy from the first time. I think it was 2007. I can't remember. Came here for the first time and fell in love and thought, I'm moving to Italy. Then proceeded to talk about it for 17 years until February 2022. I remember sitting in bed. It was a Sunday. It was a snowstorm outside, minus 30 degrees. And I thought, why am I here? Why am I here? Toronto is very cold during the winter and gray and just soulless. So I sat up and I'm like, okay, you have to remember I'm a life coach. So I'm coaching myself at this point, and I was like, you keep talking about things, but you don't actually do them. And you teach about, taking action. Well, you've had this dream. When are you planning on realizing it? Because it's now or never. So I thought, okay, I'm going to put it out there. I'm moving to Italy. And I'm like, okay, where's my phone? Because I need to call someone to tell them this. Because once you put it out to the universe, it's a done deal. 6 months later, I was in Florence. So
Wow.
how I chose Florence, I've been here, like you said, I've been here a dozen times. I've enjoyed it thoroughly. And it was between Florence and Rome, to be honest. And I thought, okay, I'm moving to a new country. I don't know anyone. I don't speak the language. Maybe I'll start with Florence because it's such a small city. It'll be an easier transition into a brand new country. And that's literally how I chose Florence. I thought it would just be, smaller scale, smaller volume of people. Mistake. And here I am.
So that mistake, you mean by the volume of people because of tourism or
Wow.
yeah.
Wow. You think about it, but you can never actually imagine what it's like to be in one of the most popular cities in the world, one of the most beautiful too, with over 2 million tourists in a city that's 380 some odd thousand people at all times. So, yeah, the sheer volume is just mind boggling.
Yeah, I've noticed that as well. So for me, most like I'm in the country of Montenegro now, which is quite small and it's a nice escape from busyness. Barcelona, I was living in Barcelona for years and same thing. I mean, Barcelona is still a big size city. There's a few million people there, but they get roughly 30 million tourists every year. So it's as you said, it's just people, people, people all the time. But I did like Florence a little bit more in the fall and almost getting into
Mm-hmm.
the winter. It does get a bit cold, and well, at least
Yeah.
the times there, it does get a little bit cold and windy. It was nice that there were no people around.
Well, it's funny. Like today started out cold and gray and drizzly. Now it's perfectly sunny and 28 degrees. And it's going to go back down. But then, as of Monday or Tuesday of next week, it just drops. So it's going from 20s to all of a sudden 17 to 13. So it's like, here's fall. So,
Yeah.
not complaining because, the heat of the summer really does take its toll after a while. But,
Mhm.
for those people who think that it's beautiful weather all year round, it's not. It gets winter, it rains, it's cold. I brought my Canada Goose jacket and everybody made fun of me. What are you going to need? I wore it every single day last winter. Cold is cold. I don't care what anybody says.
Mhm.
It can be 5 degrees, it could be minus 20. Cold is cold.
And what I find too, as well with Barcelona and with Florence, it's more humid than it is in parts of Canada. So I'm
Yeah.
from Calgary, where it's very dry. And even though, it could be 7 degrees outside, even here in Montenegro, it could be 7, 8 degrees, 10 degrees outside, and it'll be cloudy, rainy, and that humidity, and it
Yeah.
feels a lot colder than the actual temperature is. So it does make a difference.
It does. And also you have to remember too, this is, an old school city. So there's no such thing as insulation. None of the apartments or the houses are insulated. So everything, the moisture is in the house. I mean, it takes 2 or 3 days to dry your laundry in the winter. So
Mm.
that's definitely something to remember. It's very, very humid and very cold inside. Sometimes it's colder inside than it is outside.
Yes. Yeah, that's something that really a lot of North Americans do need to remember because these cities are very old, as you said, no insulation. They're built with concrete, cement,
Yeah.
and there's not they're not big, there's not a lot of airflow through them, and it just absorbs that heat in the summer and it absorbs that coolness in winter. And so
Exactly.
when we look at pictures and things, we always dream of, oh, it's so beautiful. I was shocked when I found out that there was snow in Spain before I moved there. Not in Barcelona, but it's just one of those things that we always tend to see the photos of the summertime, the beautiful weather, the sunshine, and there is a lot of that, but it does still get cold. And for some people who love the cooler temperatures, that's great for
Yeah.
right? They'll enjoy more of that fall. Then the summer months are good to escape and go away and go
Yeah.
to countries where the weather is a little bit cooler.
It is because in the summer, Florence, and especially Florence, is in a valley. So you would think that heat rises, heat doesn't. Heat goes all the way into the valley and you want to die, which explains why half of Florence is pretty much shut down almost all of August, and a good chunk of people leave in July as well to go to the beach or anywhere where there's a breeze because the heat is intense here in Florence in the summer, July and August especially.
Well, that's good for our listeners to know. And so you're there now. What
Mhm.
type of visa are you on right now while you're staying there?
So I'm on a student visa at the moment.
Okay,
I came here to study Italian, so I qualified for a visa. And what gets you to qualify is first and foremost, you obviously have to sign up for a full-time program. Now, you can do a 4-month program, you can do a 1-year program, the visa will apply accordingly. So if you do a 4-month program, you're not going to get a 1-year visa. It just
right.
doesn't work like that. So they'll see, oh, it's now April, you're starting school in June and it goes until September, you'll get a visa until October. You know what I mean? The visa will be only up and usually within 2 weeks of school ending. So that's how I'm here. And the criteria you need to show for that is you need to show that you can support yourself. So technically, you're not allowed to work, but you
Right.
need to show a big chunk of change in your bank account so they know you can support yourself. You also need to show health insurance because you don't qualify for the health insurance or the health services here in Italy, which is free to residents, but not to people who are here on visas with permisos. You need to show health insurance, you need to show money in the bank, you need to show that you're registered for a course, and you need to show that you have a place to live. So all of that was stuff that I did in advance. I applied for my visa, I got accepted, and then you're allowed to renew. So you don't renew a visa, you get a permesso di soggiorno, which is really your permit to stay. Visa gets you in, permit lets you stay. You can renew it up to 2 times, if I'm not mistaken. So one visa can get you 3 years of residency here in Italy. And then after that, unless you can turn it into something else, uh, you have to go.
No.
Yeah.
Then time is up, time to go.
Yeah.
But that's great for people who want to stay longer term, want to learn Italian, and also don't want to stay full time, don't want Italy maybe to be home forever, but they want it to be home for 1 or 2 or possibly 3 years.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. You do have to sign up again and again to a program, but I mean, there's over 40 universities here in Florence. There are dozens and dozens of language schools. So you can study art. You can, if you decide, okay, I'm going to do my master's. I actually contemplated, should I do my master's in certain things? And so the options for a student visa are plenty. You just have to be careful, because with a student visa, you can sign up for a language school, and then you have to be in the same language school for the next 2 years if you want to continue to renew your visa, or you can sign up for a university program. That's the only way you can change schools, but you can't go to one language school, for example, and then change to another language school and renew. It does not work like that. Bureaucracy
Okay.
here is alive and well.
Well, that's good to know, because then people want to make sure that they're picking the right school to begin with, because they're stuck there in a
Yeah.
sense, um, continuing with that school. So it's very important then to do some research and before deciding and signing up for that school.
Exactly, exactly. So far, so
Right.
good. We'll see what happens. Once you're here, though, you have an opportunity to turn your student visa into a work visa. So when your visa is about 2 months from being expired, and you can apply for I think there's an in-between thing. It's like it's looking for work kind of visa, or temporary permit, and you have a certain amount of time to find a job. And then, assuming the owners or the company that you're with are willing to sponsor you, you can then turn it into a work visa, and that's can be indefinite.
Okay, great. And have you done this visa process yourself, or have you hired a lawyer, or a little bit of both because of the bureaucracy and language? How have you worked with your way through it?
So I did the first time myself, and then the second time I did it myself as well, but I just didn't want to continue with the same school. So I was trying to see what all my options would be. By fluke, I happened to go to Toronto in September. I spoke to a lawyer, like, to see what my options are, because I will not go back to the same school. Just applied for a brand new visa. Told
Oh,
them the situation in Toronto. Within a week, I got a new visa, and I submitted all my paperwork last week here. And now that'll buy me another year. And with this school, I'd be definitely happy to continue for one more year after, but I'm hoping to turn it into a work visa by the end of this year.
okay, great. And I know you didn't move there alone. You brought your fur baby with you. So for those who
Yes.
are listening, let them know kind of what the process was and what you had to do to bring your dog with you.
Hmm. So I'm very lucky, because my dog is a five-pound dog. So he fits automatically in the seat in front of me. So that immediately made the whole process a lot simpler, because if I had a bigger dog and I needed to put him in the hold, I'm not 100% sure I'd be in Italy right now, to be honest with you. I have an issue putting dogs in the hold, but I know there's a lot of people who have flown with dogs before, and it's not an issue. What you need to do, and in every city everywhere in the world there's an opportunity to do that, is you need to get a passport for your dog. So it's not like the same passport that we do. What that entails is your dog needs to be up to date with all their vaccines, especially the rabies vaccine, because they check for that. All other vaccines need to be up to date, and you need a health certificate saying that the dog's been checked from top to bottom and he's completely healthy. Then there's organizations. I know there's one in Toronto. There's one, here in Italy, they do it, where you can get an actual passport. I did not get a passport. I just went with all my documents in a file folder, and every time they ask for it, I hand it to them. The rabies certificate is on the top with a tag that you get for it. We did a rabies shot that's good for 3 years to eliminate, but we have an amazing vet here. So when we need to renew his rabies shot, it'll just happen here. So it's a really easy process. You just have to make sure that you have all the right documentation. And it depends. For me, because he's a tiny dog and he came with me on the plane, it ranged anywhere between, I've flown with him about 6 or 7 times already. Sometimes it's 75 euros, sometimes it's $150. It depends on the airline and where we're flying.
Right. Yeah. And a good point to remember, like you said, is all the cities have somewhat of different requirements too. So if
Mhm.
somebody's looking into that, because when I first moved to Costa Rica, I brought my dog with me. He had to go into the hold because he was just a little bit too big. He was a little bit chubby too. He was about 10 or 12 pounds. And so I used a service, did most of the paperwork myself. And one thing that I learned from there when I was talking with the airline is they said to me, every city has different rules and regulations. So his example was when they fly to Germany, whether and the airline, I think it was United I was talking with, they fly into 5 different cities within Germany, and each city has a different requirement for bringing in your pet. So what you want to do is you really want to make sure that you are contacting or talking to the airline about that specific city.
Yeah.
And
Mhm.
kind of in a way, good thing is if you're not happy with the requirements, I guess, in a way, or because some of them are pretty strange and weird sometimes, you can perhaps fly to another city within the same country and maybe not need all the exact same documents. So
Yeah.
you can kind of work it to your advantage in some cases, but then
Mhm.
knowing obviously if you're flying into another city, then of course car rental transportation, those are other things to think
Yep.
about as well. But it is important to know that every city, even in the same country, has its own requirements.
Absolutely. And I was happy to hear that Italy does not do quarantine for dogs. So that was a huge criteria as well, because if there was a quarantine of a month or two, we wouldn't be here.
Yeah, that would be crazy.
Yeah.
But yeah, and I found too when I brought my dog to Costa Rica, I made sure I had triple copies of everything because
Same.
sometimes they would say, "Oh, well, you'll drop off a copy here, or they're going to want a copy." It's like, well, if I'm leaving a copy, I need to make sure I have more copies. So I went to be on the safe side, and I think I had 3 copies of everything just to make
Absolutely.
sure.
Absolutely. Same here. Better safe than sorry.
Yes, definitely, definitely. And so now that you're there, you've been there for a while. Have you opened up a bank account there, or are you just using your Canadian, or how are you doing your kind of day-to-day banking?
So funny you say that because I just had a conversation with someone the other day thinking, I think it might be about time that I opened a bank. However, I do have a Wise account, and Wise is an international online bank, but they do provide debit cards. So, and their fees are much lower than regular banks. So, for me to do a global transfer from my bank account in Toronto would be a lot more expensive than it would be to do a global transfer from Wise. So, what I will do is I will do a transfer from my Canadian account into Wise and then use my bank card to do any banking, to pay my rent, to pay bills, all that kind of stuff. But I am considering going to open a bank account here in Italy, and you don't need to be a resident. The only thing you need to look out for is sometimes the fees for non-residents could be a lot higher, and sometimes it becomes not worth it. If they're going to charge me 20 euros every time I do a small transfer or anything like that, it's just not worth it at that point. So for now, Wise works for me. My landlady is happy to accept a transfer from Wise. I'm just trying to figure out how, like, I get paid. I teach English part-time here, so I get paid through Wise as well. Um, the only downside to Wise is you cannot make deposits because there is no
Right.
physical bank account. But I need to figure out if you can use any other bank machine to do deposits with a Wise card. So I don't know if that works or not, something I need to look into, but I think the easiest thing would be to open an account.
Yes, I also use Wise. I've been using it for years. It's
Mhm.
fantastic, as you said, for all of those things. And I don't think there is a place where you can go and do deposits of cash.
I don't
That's
think so
that is one
either.
because it's more of they're known for transferring money, and as you said, they have accounts, but not a place where you can go and deposit cash
Yeah.
into it. Um, And that is definitely one of the negatives. But I think they find that I'm assuming for that most people, they're not depositing cash. They're getting paid via transfers and things like that.
It
So,
depends. It depends because I have two students that pay me cash. And I
mhm,
thought, at the beginning it was great because it's like, okay, that's going to be my grocery money. So I don't have to take it out of the bank. But now I'm doing a small project for a chain of restaurants here. I'm doing a little PR program for them. And, they're giving me a chunk of cash at the end of each month. And it's like, I don't want to have this cash. I want to deposit it. So that's why I've been thinking about opening an account because I think it'll make it a lot easier to not always have, big cash around. It's not about interest or anything like that. It's I have it, I spend it. So it's best
right.
not
And
to.
it's easy when we know it's coming more is coming in every week. It's like, oh, I'm going to get more at the end of the week. I'm going to get more at the end of the week. And
Exactly.
it's a lot easier to spend. And I think too, potentially, it would just add one more thing when you apply for a permanent
Mhm.
residency. Um, and then if you plan to go on for citizenship after, I think it's about 7 or 10 years, having
10.
that establishment also, it's like, no, I have a bank account here. I'm doing
Yeah.
banking,
Hmm.
doing these things, all of those sometimes little things, even though I say little, but I'm sure the bureaucracy is going to be a little bit frustrating
Oh yeah.
because most times it is. But all of those things help if we want that kind of longer term, help to be more, I'm living here, I want to stay here. These are the things I'm doing to really put roots into the community.
Exactly, exactly. So, I mean, for me right now, I have a beautiful relationship with my landlady, I should say. She happens to own the whole building. So, but I do go through an agency. Like she has two or three apartments that she rents out through an agency, which is how I found it to begin with. But I deal with her directly to pay the utilities and rent and all that kind of stuff. So I know that in terms of residency, if as long as you can show a contract that here, usually the rental contracts, it's called 4x4. So you rent it for 4 years with the option to renew it for another 4 years. There's also a 3x2, 3x3. There's a million and one different things.
Okay.
As someone who doesn't have, I have temporary residency, not permanent residency, I'm allowed to do year by year. So it's 1 year rentals that they'll do. I'm sure if I spoke to her, we could do long-term rentals, but really, what difference does it make if I rent it for 4 years or 1 year? I just renew the contract at the end of each year. So yeah, so far so good. It worked. It's working out.
Great. And so, um, going through the agency and getting in for rentals, because I know in different countries things kind of work differently. How
Mhm.
much or how many months deposit did you have to put down, and then an additional agency fee? Was that a specific dollar amount or equivalent to a month's deposit, or how did
Yeah.
that work?
So the way this particular agency works is you pay first month's rent, 2 months rent security deposit, and 1 month rent agency fee. So 4 months in total, which wasn't terrible. And then there's, service charges and all that kind of stuff. So it worked out to about 55, between 55 and 5,700 euros, which translates to about $7,000 or $8,000, depends, on the exchange rate at the time. But almost everyone will take at least 2 months rent, first and last, but that's at bare minimum. It's very rare. Most of the time they want a security deposit as well. With an agency, there will always be an agency fee. But you know what? It was totally worth it because the apartments, I've been looking for apartments because I'm always one of those curious people. I'll buy shoes and then I'll go look for the same shoes in 5 million places. I do the same thing with apartments, and the apartments that this particular agency has on offer are much nicer, cleaner, renovated, a little bit more expensive, but worth every penny because at least something happens. There's an agency behind it. You don't have to deal with a landlord. I mean, sometimes you do, but I I I see what's available out there. And the one thing that people need to be really, really aware of, especially in Italy, the scams when it comes to apartment rentals are mind blowing. It's people will show you an apartment that doesn't even belong to them and then get all these deposits from you and then disappear. So there's a big scam going on right now in Florence because there's so many students, university students, and they're
Mm-hmm.
all looking for 6 months, 3 months, 1 year apartments. So the scams have been rampant. So I always tell people, sometimes it's worth to spend a little extra money to not get scammed and get something decent that you can live in, because mold is a big problem in Florence because of the humidity. So, having apartments that the mold's been painted over but not actually cleaned up or fixed, you can get sick from that. So it's something that you have to be very diligent about. And for also, you cannot apply for a visa without showing that you have a place to stay. Now, it doesn't have to be a permanent place to stay, it can be temporary. But again, be careful who you talk to, what you pay for. I always say, if there's no contract in place, do not sign anything. Do not give away money. Do not, especially not cash. You want to be able to do a transfer. You want a contract in exchange. And sometimes a lot of owners, oh no, we don't need a contract, because they don't want to register it as earnings with do not rent that apartment. You're not here to make their lives easy. They're here to supposedly make your life easy. So yeah, stuff to think
Right. And
about.
with those contracts, I'm sure that they are in Italian. So it would be good to have somebody speaks Italian, reads Italian, and can go through it with you so you know what you're signing. Because even if they say, oh, yeah, we can do up a contract, if you don't know Italian, you have no idea what you're signing.
Absolutely. And sometimes with the agencies, you can say, can you send me the contract in English? Because they are dealing with a lot of foreigners and they will have an English contract available.
Yeah. So definitely it's a bit of almost like an insurance policy, I guess, in a way of
Yeah.
using that agency. Sure, it's equivalent to 1 month rent, but if you spread that out over a span of a year, it's really not that much per month
No.
to know that it's not a scam. If there's problems, you have not only
Yeah.
potentially the owner to go to, as you do in some situations, people will have that, but also the agency as well to
Absolutely.
have your side as well, because the agency wants you to be happy because they want you to send your friends, your family, people you know, or to come back and use them again in the future. So
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah.
and I think that's a really good point for people moving anywhere. Barcelona has issues, or Spain in general also has those types of scam issues. When I was first looking at places and I was looking online, and I knew immediately it was a scam when they're like, okay, well, you got to move fast. Things are moving fast and you need to send a deposit. And I just said, I'm not sending a deposit without physically standing in the place. Not even realizing that there are scams out there where you can physically stand in the place and it still might not really be available
Yeah.
for you, which is pretty scary. But never ever sight unseen. And I ended up to going eventually. I went through an agency. I started out with an Airbnb and had
Same.
that at first, and then went through an agency, and it was the same thing. I just thought it was easier. They know. And one thing about agencies too, and I don't know if it's the same there in Italy, but in Spain, agencies kind of deal with their own set of apartments. And
Yes.
so you do want to check out different agencies, because going through different agencies, you'll see different apartments. One agency doesn't show or know of all of the things
Yeah.
available. It's not like there's an MLS list of apartments
I,
available.
I know, because I looked for that MLS list, which does not exist. But I always say agencies will always have a lot more on offer. I mean, there are websites like Idealista and Immobilier and all those that have places as well, but they don't stand behind, like, it's not, people will list with them. They're not the ones who manage, the full rental. I had an apartment before. I got it through Idealista because I hummed and hawed so long about the apartment that I'm in now that it would have been available 2 days after I arrived to, but I don't know, maybe there's something better, blah, blah, blah. I ended up losing it for an entire month. So it was available in August. So I booked an Airbnb that happened to be 2 streets over. And I remember being in the apartment, and on the 10th time I hit my head on the spiral staircase. I'm like, thank God this is not my permanent apartment. I die, because you have to book something just to tie you over. And it was so terrible. But it's like, it's okay. I went through an agency. I have an amazing apartment. Everything, people vouch for it. It's clean. It's newly renovated. This is not, it's like, okay, we're good. We're good. We're going to be good. We're going to be good.
Right, right. And it's good to know that sometimes, that we can do things that are temporary and we can have a place that may not be ideal, but it's temporary until we're there because too, the nice thing about that, unless you've been to the city many times and recently, things change, right?
Yeah.
Streets get improvements, things kind of get run down, stores get closed, new things open up. And so the city or the area that you're looking at can always change. And there's
Mm-hmm.
some that can seem like very busy areas, but you'll find these few little pockets or these few little streets that are still really quiet. And you walk 2 minutes and you're in the center of busyness, but as soon as you get
Mm-hmm.
off
Yeah.
there, you're quiet. And so it is important to really check out neighborhoods
Yeah.
and visit cities before making that decision to move.
100%, because I remember thinking at the beginning, oh, I want to live in the center. I want to open my windows. I want to look at the Domo every day. Thank God I am not at the center. At the last minute, I started doing research, kind of Google, where do the expats live? Where do most of the locals live? And I am now on the other side of the river in Oltrarno, which, it's not in the center. It's busy because, tourists have made their ways to this side of the river as well. But I can sleep quietly at night. There's no noise, there's no bars, there's no craziness. Nobody's walking around at 3 in the morning screaming and shouting, drunken Brits, coming home from the pub at night. Like none of that is where I am. So, I always say, yeah, it's nice in theory to think about,
Hmm.
I want to live where the action is. No, you don't. Not in a place where on a daily basis there are 2 or 3 million people in the city. So are there, I think there's probably 30, 40, 50 million people that visit Italy every year. But like I say to people, in Florence, on any given day, there's an additional 2 or 3 million people in the city. On any given day, you do not want to live where it's the mayhem. You do not. So it's true. You do need to visit the city. You do need to figure out the neighborhoods, what's nice, what's not, what's, crazy busy, what's a little quieter. It's everything about this trip started with research and continues with research. I just met someone who is looking for an apartment on this side of the river because she came, with a student visa, same thing, going, I want to live in the center. And she's like, biggest mistake I ever made was living in the center. I'm like, I know, I trust me, I almost made that mistake.
And I was exact same with Barcelona. When I was there at first, I'm like, I want to live in the center. I want to be where everything is, and it's so cool. And I love the cobblestone streets. And then when I was looking, I couldn't find anything really at the center. So the Airbnb that I got was in the Champla area, just outside of the center. And I ended up staying there for I think about 2 years.
Mm-hmm.
And it was short, like, and I just thought I'll just stay there for like a few months and then I'll find something in the center. And yeah, after even the few months, within that few months, I just knew, thank goodness I did not move to the center because it's exactly everything you said. People are on holidays and I get it, but people get ridiculously drunk. People get loud. They don't
Mm-hmm.
realize
Yeah.
how thin the walls are and how
Yeah.
sound carries.
Like
And
sometimes I'll be on the phone outside my building and I have to whisper sometimes because I know everyone upstairs can hear me. So
mhm.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
and so sometimes, like you said, in theory, we think it's great, but it's great to be 20 minutes, 10 minutes out. Like I
Yeah.
love walking. And I walk
Same.
so much now that I live in Europe, everywhere. And if I want to walk to go have dinner, I can walk 20, 30 minutes to go to a restaurant. Like that doesn't bother me. And then after eating, I definitely enjoy walking that 20-ish,
Same.
30 minutes on the way home or take the long tour because the evenings are nice, even if it's cold and winterish, you just kind of bundle up because
Yeah.
it's never Canadian cold.
It's never
So,
Canadian
um,
cold. But I've also mastered the art of the bicycle here in
oh,
Florence. So
great.
it took me 6 months to have the courage to get on one. And like, listen, there's people everywhere, and sometimes you can have a nervous breakdown, but game changer. Riding a bike in
Yeah,
the city is a game changer. So I always say I'm 15 minutes walk from the center, and that's perfect. Like my favorite restaurant, which is quote unquote far, is a 25-minute walk. So it's really never that bad.
right. Right. And I'm the same thing with the biking in Barcelona. At first I was just there's people, there's this, there's that, but they've got so many pathways and stuff that after I just realized I just have to do it. Like I
Yep.
just have to get on and just go and to go on a day where I don't specifically have to be anywhere, need to do anything, and it was a huge difference because sometimes even the bike would be faster than taking the metro or the bus in Barcelona.
Where I used to teach English, I taught at a school. It was a 45-minute walk, a 40-minute bus ride, a 12-minute bicycle. I'm like,
Wow.
okay, I'm taking that way I don't have to leave 45 minutes before, which means you have to wake up an hour before. Now it's like, all right, I can leave 15 minutes before and I'm there right on time.
Right. And it's a bike, so you're still getting fresh air, you're moving, you're getting there quick. So
Exactly.
it's perfect. That's great. So, not everything is always rainbows and butterflies and amazing and wonderful, of course, anywhere in the world. So, what are a few of I don't really want to use the like negatives or annoyances or things that kind of irritate you a little bit to think, oh, why do they do this way? Or, oh, why isn't there a better way to do that?
Well, first and foremost, and I think it's like this in a lot of places, but definitely in Italy, the bureaucracy can drive you to drink. It is just madness. Nothing makes sense. Somebody will explain how something is done, and you're just staring at them going, why? Like that makes no sense. Like you're creating work for yourself. You're making things difficult. Instead of going from A to B in a straight line, there's like
Mm.
zigzags and circles and turn around and do a U-turn and then go back the other way. Like, why? Why? So the bureaucracy was something I needed to get used to. This is something that a lot of people will find shocking, but Florence is probably one of the unfriendliest cities in Italy. People think,
Really?
oh my God, everybody was so friendly when I was there. No, you're a tourist. They wanted your money. Of course, they're going to be friendly. But when you live here and you go to the dog park and you see the same people every single morning with their dogs for over a year, they'll say hi to you. No one will invite you for coffee. No one will invite you for an aperitivo or dinner or to get together. Sometimes no one will say hi to you. Even if you look them right in the eye and say hello back, they will ignore you. And Florentines are self-professed, closed off, um, a closed off community. They don't let people in, they don't trust people. They actually hate the tourists, but again, it's a means to an end. It's a catch 22. They bring in a ton of money, which is what helps the city survive, but at the same time, Florentines do not love the tourists because it's mayhem and everything is packed. Imagine you're trying to get to a doctor's appointment and you're trying to navigate through throngs of people. But the Florentines themselves are just not nice, not nice. I don't have a single Italian friend. I have a beautiful community of expats that I'm friends with, and people from Finland and the UK and the US. And I actually have a Canadian girlfriend as well. But very, very difficult to make friends with the Florentines, which I found really disheartening because I went down to Puglia for a week in August. I went to the nearest dog park, and within 5 minutes, I was invited to for a coffee, to join for lunch, or do you want to come, go for a walk with us? I'm like, I just met you 5 minutes ago. This is amazing. So that's the one thing that has been really disheartening and shocking to me. I didn't expect it to be like that because, we all moved to Italy thinking, oh my God, I'm going to make so many Italian friends and I'm going to be at someone's Nona's house and they'll invite me for the holidays. Yeah, they don't and they won't. And that's something you need to accept. Didn't realize how much patience I would need to live in the city. For example, when you go to the immigration office and your appointment is at 11:20, go at 6 a.m. because appointments are just suggestions. And you will stand for 6 hours waiting to be told yes or no to something really simple. So it's little things like that that, are a little tougher to deal with, a harder pill to swallow. But like anything else, you just kind of make peace with what it is and you get on with it. But, I tell people, if you come here with certain expectations of what life will be like, it is not the movie. It is not romantic. It's not always nice. And no, you will not have this huge community of Italians. And people are saying, oh, but I'm following this person who lives in Florence and they're always with Italian people. I said, yeah, for their videos. There's no way they have an Italian community after 1 year here in Florence. So yeah, that's it.
I had a friend of mine who had very similar experience in Rome. She just was recently living in Rome and left, and she had lived in Florence, I think, probably about, let's say, 15 years ago, and had a great experience and loved it. And she was young and had
Mm-hmm.
friends and stuff like that. And so she was thinking, like, I really loved Rome and fluent in Italian. And so she went to Rome, and I want to say she was there for about 8 or 9 months. And she just said, this isn't for me. I'm glad I did it again, but I have no friends. No, there isn't the let's go for coffee, let's go for lunch.
Yep.
She said it was a lot more challenging and a lot different than what she remembered it when she was a lot younger. And I mean, it is disappointing. The same is in Barcelona. The Catalans don't
Mm-hmm.
like the tourists. They tolerate them because they bring in money. And I can kind of see both sides of it because imagine how we would feel. We live in a very beautiful, great place, and all of a sudden there's millions of tourists who come, and there's fabulous tourists. They're ones that are great, they're kind, they're
Mm-hmm.
respectful, they're nice, they're clean, everything. But there's always a handful that get belligerent, get ridiculously drunk, leave garbage. When I was in Rome last time, at Trevi Fountain, which was beautiful, I think it was either later on in the evening or early in the morning. I can't remember which one it was, but finally there was only a few people there. The amount of garbage
Yeah.
that people left on the ground was appalling.
Mm-hmm.
Like, there is no need for horrible tourists, and they make people hate tourists. And
Yep.
in situations like that, I don't blame them either, because there's times when I hate tourists. And
No,
when I was there, even though I was a tourist there, I was like, how disrespectful can people be to be leaving their garbage and
100%.
graffiti and things like that? And then, yes, that's why tourists become hated, is because of people
Mm-hmm.
like that.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I understand where it comes from, but the fact that the Florentines are self-admitted, closed off people, I'm like, it's not a badge of honor. I wouldn't be proud of that. Like it's
Right.
almost like they tell it to you with pride. I'm like, you're telling me that you're mean and rude and unfriendly as if it's something to be proud of. Oh, okay. Sure.
Well, then
Uh,
I don't want to be friends with you either. No.
exactly. No, and it just become
But it
easier.
is
You know
too
what?
bad. It really is.
It
And
it
and
really
and
it
people do
is.
need to know that.
Yeah, no, it is. And that's why I tell people, find the expat communities when you get here. So at least you can
Mm.
make one or two friends, because being isolated and sitting at home all the time or going by yourself, it gets old really quickly, especially when you see people
Yes.
having a good time. And you just get to a point where it's like, I need to have human conversation, not on Zoom with my friends at home. Like, I need to be able to go for a coffee with someone. Like, you miss the human connection, a human touch.
Right.
And that's why I say, you know what, don't even bother trying to make Italian friends. It'll happen over time. I think I think when you're somewhere for 3, 4, 5 years, okay, everything starts shifting and changing. But the first year or two, It just doesn't happen. Not at, definitely not in Florence. And I'm a really outgoing person. I say hello to everyone. I smile at people and I get weird looks back. It's like, really? Like somebody smiled at you and you're not nice. So, all right, kudos to you.
Well, you know what? I think that is great to let people to know is to have the expectation that to really, if you're going to become part of the community eventually, that it's going to take years. It's not
Yeah,
going to be happening overnight. It's not going to be in the first year, but it's going to be there. And maybe it is. So then they know that you're there long term
yeah,
and that you
exactly.
really going to be are part of the community, not just somebody that's there for 1 or 2 years and gone. Because I've talked with other people about this too, and that's part of remote work, digital nomad, and things like that is that they themselves don't want to get too close to people because they know that they're only going to be there for 1 year, 2 years, 6 months. And it is harder to build up friendships. And so they're probably self-admitted they're not the nicest people, but also that I don't, what's the point of making a friend if you're going to
Yeah.
be gone in 1 or 2 years?
Oh, I understand because I didn't get close to too many people at my school because I was an anomaly. I think there was three of us who were there for 9 or 10 months of school. Everybody else was, I'm here for a week to go to school. I'm here for 2 weeks, for 3 months. But it's like, no, I don't need friends that I will be. I don't need Zoom friendships and WhatsApp
Right.
friendships. You know, I have
Mhm.
tons of those from home. So, yeah, it's hard. And I tell people if you have a fantasy that you're going to move to Italy and it's going to be under the Tuscan sun, it's not. Just get rid of the expectations. You know,
Mm,
think of what everyday life for you is like in your home city. It's going to be the same in Florence, just in an Italian format.
right.
You know, so you still have bills to pay and doctors to go to, and you still have your rent, and you still have to clean your apartment, and you still have to go grocery shopping, and you have to go pay bills and deal with the phone when it works and it doesn't work, and Wi-Fi. It's everyday life. It's just in Italian. Yeah.
Which is absolutely, absolutely true. That's
Hmm.
definitely true. And so you're studying there, you're doing a little bit of tutoring, but you're are you doing any coaching? Because earlier you said
I am.
that
I
you are a
am.
coach, so you're doing
Yeah.
some coaching as well.
Most of the majority of my clients are in North America, so it's Zoom business.
Hmm.
Technically, I'm not supposed to, but I am. I have some loyal clients, and I just love what I do. And I wasn't going to shut down the business for a year or two while studying Italian. So the
Right.
goal is to either get a work visa and do this for I'm doing a little bit of PR for a restaurant chain, so it might be to do it on a bigger scale or to get a self-employed visa, which the only way I can do any of that is once I get my permesso, which I don't have as of yet. But
Okay.
once you have that, you can start. There's a lot of different options. There's
Right.
just a lot of, bureaucratic criteria to go with each one of those options. So it's not
Absolutely.
like if people say, oh, I'm just going to apply for a work visa. I'm like, well, doesn't work like that either. You need a job to apply for a work visa. You can't just
Right.
apply for one and then come and look for work. That does not exist. A
Right.
job has to be lined up. Oh, I'll apply for self-employment. Well, you need to come here. You need to set up a thing. You need to, but how are you coming here with, because technically Canadians and I think Americans too, you're allowed to be here for 90 days. So there's a lot of stuff you can try and set up here while you're here in the 90 days. You can't get a visa while you're here. You have to do it from your home country, from your home embassy. But you can start looking at processes and applying for things. I know I'm a part of a lot of different groups on Facebook, and I've been here for 2 months and I love it. I don't want to leave. Where can I apply to extend a visa? I'm like, you can't. You got to go home, do it there, then come back. Like it's little things like that, the logistics that people need to know.
For sure. And I mean, but when you know those things and you planned accordingly, then it's great because you can go and say, okay, I'm going to go for 3 months. These are the things I'm going to get done. I'm going to check out different areas. I'm going to look at visas. I'm going to see what paperwork, documents, things that I need. Maybe look at some apartments so I know. And then I'll have everything done that I need to or that I can do there in those 3 months. Then I'm going to go home. apply, do the process, and then you still have to sell most of your stuff, put it in storage, sell your house or rent it. Like, and then you do those
Yeah.
things to go, and then you're ready to go because it's going to take time to get your own home affairs in order. So it makes more sense to go first, figure things out there that you need to do, then go home, get your home affairs in order, sold, rented, storage, whatever it
Yeah.
is you need
Yeah.
to do while that's being processed, and then to go. So yeah, it's not just you go and show up and be like, "Yay, great, here I am now. Now what?"
Who's
It's
inviting me for an aperitivo?
yeah,
Nobody.
nobody.
Exactly, exactly. It's a lot of work. It's a lot of work. You can expedite it if you can, if you're lucky, but it is a lot of work because there's all the stuff at home you need to deal with too. Like I own a home in Toronto. It's being rented right now. So, you know, it's rented for the second time by different people than the first time. You have to have an agency in place in Toronto to take care of that stuff for you. If anything breaks in the house, the tenants let you know you need to have people that you can call to arrange fixing things. Like I know the dryer broke down last year in my house. I had to call my rental company that did the rental. Can you guys do this, please? As a favor, thank God, because they're friends, because rental company is not going to go out there and buy a dryer and have it, you know what I mean? So it's
Right.
little things like that. I have a storage unit that I pay for on a monthly basis that has my personal stuff in there. Yeah, it would have been nice to bring. I'm not going back to Toronto, I know that, but I'm still not at that stage where I can bring everything I own over here. So it's little things like that that you need to think about. And I always suggest create a huge list of all the things you need to do at home and then what you need to do to get to where you are, because there's a lot to think about. And jump on Facebook. There's groups like Foreigners in Florence, Expats in Italy, Moving to Italy, like all these. Join and see what people are talking about, because every question you could possibly have about moving to Italy will be on one of those groups.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Because there's been millions of people who have relocated, who are expats around the world.
Yeah.
It is possible. It's just knowing what you want and jumping through whatever those hoops are. And it is frustrating at the time, but there's frustrations at home. And so those things too will pass, and you end up designing your life the way that you want it. And it's life. It takes time. It's never
Yep.
just one and done. Like that's not
Exactly.
the way life is. And so,
Exactly. I think
um,
we all have the fantasy that that's how it is, but it's not.
right, right. I think so too. Well, Miriam, I just wanted to say thank you very much for your time today. And I know you're doing some coaching, but not really coaching. But if some people wanted to get in touch with you, how could they get in touch with you?
Absolutely. So there's my website, which is miriamwexler.me, or you can send me an email, miriam@miriamwexler.me, or you can find me on Facebook, the Miriam Wexler. Send me a message, send me a note. Happy to discuss what I coach on, what I offer, and we can go from there.
Perfect. And so once again, thank you very much for your time. I
Thank
know our
you.
listeners got a lot of valuable information, especially those who are looking to move to the beautiful Italy.
Thank you so much. It was such a pleasure to be here. I appreciate this.